Evil People, Chapter 2. Two Nicaraguans and Somoza allies, Norwin Meneses and Danilo Blandon, began furnishing cocaine to a streetwise, soon-to-be drug kingpin named Rick Ross in Los Angeles. In the late 1970s, it was discovered that cocaine could be made more addictive by mixing it into a harder rock form. This cocaine rock was cheaper to purchase, and it was more addictive than regular cocaine. Now, this was perfect for the black community, which didn't have a lot of money for regular cocaine powder. Cocaine powder is a Beverly Hills drug. It costs a lot more money. Crack cocaine is cheaper. It is manufactured by cooking cocaine powder with bicarbonate to produce what is chemically known as the freebase form of cocaine. Crack cocaine is smoked, not snorted, and when it heats up, it makes a crackling sound, thus the name crack cocaine. The inhaled vapors produce an intense high, followed by an extreme low, thus incentivizing the individual to smoke more. Consequently, crack cocaine is very addictive, much more so than cocaine powder when snorted. Meneses and Blandon started off in San Francisco, but then branched out to Los Angeles, where they made a lot of money. Rick Ross, the kingpin dealer, was selling it to the Crips and Bloods in Los Angeles, who in turn sold it to the junkies. Soon these gangs had more money than they knew what to do with. Not only did they purchase weapons, they decided to branch out to other cities of the United States. The Crips and Bloods became a national organization. The drug profits were astronomical. This money was then shipped back to the Colombian cartels and the Contras. Along the way, weapons were purchased here in the United States and in El Salvador. Helping to facilitate this, Webb alleges, were our federal agencies, the CIA and the DEA, under the supervision of Oliver North. The drugs were flown from Colombia into El Salvador to a base called Ilopango. Ilopango sits near the capital city of San Salvador, a short distance away from the Pacific Ocean. El Salvador sits on the underside of Central America. I want you to think of the acronym GENCO. Remember, GENCO was the Corleone olive oil company in The Godfather? So, GENCO, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and then of course you have Panama. Honduras and Belize sit on the upper side of Central America. So going downward, Mexico, GENCO, Panama. Now, from El Salvador, the drugs went up to Los Angeles, sometimes by way of Texas and sometimes by way of Arkansas. CIA-trained pilots were carrying the loads. Now, this triangle of trade is very much like the colonial molasses trade of the 1700s. This triangular trade was a 17th to 19th century maritime system where New England merchants shipped rum to West Africa to exchange for enslaved people. These captives were transported via the Middle Passage to the Caribbean to work on sugar plantations producing molasses. This molasses was shipped back to New England to be distilled into more rum, perpetuating the cycle. So we have something similar going on here with respect to drugs. Not the same thing, but similar enough. Additionally, weapons were being manufactured in El Salvador, which were then purchased with the drug money. In summary, drugs went from Colombia to the U.S. via Ilopango, and money flowed back to Ilopango, where weapons were purchased. Then money and weapons were shipped back to the Contras and to the Colombian cartels. Colombia to Central America, to the U.S., to Central America, to Colombia. It's beautiful. Now, this pains me to say this because I was a big fan of Ronald Reagan and Oliver North back in the 1980s. I thought these guys were great, and I thought they were doing a good thing by fighting the Sandinistas. I'm very much against these communist governments. I was then, I still am. But I was naive. I never thought to consider that we in the U.S. were creating these communists by allowing wealthy oligarchs to run a brutal encomienda in Central America. I also didn't know that in fighting these communists, we were destroying a good swath of the American population. And this destruction has had devastating effects upon our country, particularly the black community. Now, this is what Google AI has to say about the progress in the black community prior to 1980. Prior to 1980, the black community achieved significant progress driven by the civil rights movement, resulting in landmark legislation, economic gains, and increased political representation. Key advancements, including the dismantling of legalized segregation, a rising middle class, improved educational opportunities, and the rise of black political leaders in major cities. Economic gains. Between 1940 and 1970, the income gap between black and white men was reduced by about a third. The racial wealth gap was significantly narrowed, with the ratio of white to black wealth falling from 8 to 1 in 1960 to 5 to 1 by 1980. Education. College enrollment for black Americans tripled between the pre-war era and 1970. That comes from Google AI. Now, this progress was stopped by the crack cocaine epidemic. Here's what Wikipedia has to say. The 1980s crack epidemic profoundly devastated black families and communities, particularly in low-income urban areas. It drove a surge in violence, causing murder rates for young black males to double, and creating long-lasting intergenerational social and economic instability. The epidemic caused and continues to influence significant life expectancy gaps between black and white population. Key impacts on the black family and community included systemic violence. The high demand and low barrier to entry for selling crack led to intense territorial violence as young sellers tried to protect their investments in neighborhoods with already high levels of social chaos. Long-term consequences. 17 years after the arrival of crack, murder rates for young black males remained 70% higher than pre-epidemic levels. Social disintegration. The embedded nature of the crack market accelerated the breakdown of community structures and family units. Criminalization and incarceration. The surge in crack-related crimes combined with mandatory minimum sentencing laws resulted in the mass incarceration of black men and women, further destabilizing family structures. The crisis, which was especially severe in cities like Miami, New York, Los Angeles, and Atlanta, left a legacy of inequality that continues to affect many black families today. Thank you.